Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with founder of Connected Ghostwriting, LLC, and Journey to Success, Inc., Maria Chapman. She is a writer, entrepreneur, and coach who leverages over a decade of coaching experience to help entrepreneurs and thought leaders articulate their ideas and expand their impact through powerful content. With expertise across topics like mental health, education, and business strategy, Maria's work goes beyond writing. She helps others find success by aligning their work with their values. A disability advocate, outdoor enthusiast, and parent of 5, her journey from a career in elementary education to successful business owner inspires her clients to turn their passions into a living. It's an incredible story. Enjoy.
Hey, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
So before we get into your work, I want to know first and foremost, one of the more tumultuous things that we've survived in the last 4.5, 5 years was the pandemic and getting through COVID. How many waves were created during that time period that have ultimately affected the way that you live your life now in a new year?
Oh, so that's actually, I love that question because while everyone else was dealing with a pandemic, I was dealing with a neuromuscular condition and paralysis. So when everybody talks about COVID, I'm like, yeah, I kind of remember that time, but I was fighting a whole different battle, right? So that's really when my journey into entrepreneurship started because I couldn't teach anymore. I had to pivot completely. And looking back, I'm a little glad I got out of teaching before the pandemic because I was watching that from the sidelines and that looked scary. Yeah.
It was. But that's interesting. I'll hear stories here and there during the pandemic of things that were momentous in other ways that had nothing to do with that. It's fascinating. But ultimately, I'm curious in your work right now, if I was to put you in front of a bunch of elementary school kids, which is probably a native tongue for you, and let's say third graders, it's career day, and one of the kids in the room was curious about what you did for a living and asked you that, how would you answer them?
Okay, I've actually done this in my daughter's classroom, so I kind of have a cheat here. The way I explained it is that I write books for people who don't have the time or skills to write them themselves.
So that's interesting, the ghostwriting route. And before we get to that and delve into that, I want to know, when you were in the third grade, what was the vision and dream for your life? What did you want to be?
I wanted to be a writer.
Oh, okay. So what was the book for you? As somebody that wanted to be a writer and obviously loves to read, what was the early book for you that you loved?
The one that grabbed me initially was Little Women. That was the one where I said, ooh, I want to do this. And it's one that I've read over and over and over again throughout the years, but really what it was any book with a female character that was not following the norms of whatever her time period was.
So let me ask you this. What was the first story or first thing that you wrote in your life where you realized that writing was kind of your native tongue, was something that you needed to do with your life?
So I actually, I ran my high school newspaper, and when I say run it, I did a lot of the writing, and I was also the editor, and I created an ad sales program. So we'd go out and sell advertisements to neighborhood businesses. And so I sort of took the school newspaper and turned it into this self-sustaining thing that allowed it to grow. And so for me, when I think about writing, I've always thought of it from an entrepreneurial bent. So not just I love to write, but also can we use writing to make a living? Can we use writing to make money, and how? And I think that's a little bit different approach than people who come at it from, say, like a creative writing, fine arts degree standpoint, because they're often taught how to write very well, but not taught how to make money from it.
So,
no, go ahead.
No, you're good. I'm sorry.
So I've been a writer my whole life. you know, when you're 18 and people tell you you can't make a living as a writer, you kind of listen to them. So I landed in teaching, and I was still writing on the side. I had someone close to me in a fit of anger delete a manuscript off my computer, and I didn't write for almost 10 years after that.
Wow.
Yeah, it was one of the, like, looking back on it, it's like, well, I could blame it on them, but really I'm the one that made the decision to hang up the writing, you know? So, but it's like when people talk about writer's block, I'm like, oh, I know what that is, right? So, and then I started writing again when I was hospitalized from the neuromuscular condition. I was paralyzed completely. My jaw didn't work, hands didn't work, nothing worked. And my hands were the first thing to start working. And I'm sitting in a hospital with nothing to do. So I started writing and publishing on Medium from the hospital bed. I made quite a bit of money off those first few articles. Some of them were syndicated, and I said, wait a minute, I might be onto something here. So it was sort of like the universe pushed me into writing again, because up until that point, I hadn't written a thing in 10 years, unless it was a master's degree paper.
You know, when I was a kid, I created this piece of art. I was young, and I remember I showed it to a sibling, and they ridiculed me, and I ripped it up.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
You know, and I don't know that I ever really did or got serious about it until I got to high school, and it, like, reignited this. And I think about that, too. You know, I just was too young. I wasn't, you know, I didn't have any maturity or any mileage enough to kind of put it in its proper context. But I'm a visual artist now. I have shows. I've been doing it for a long time, and it's weird how those moments will be really big shapeshifters that maybe in some magnanimously mysterious way they propelled you to get to places that maybe you would have never been able to get to before.
Yeah, no, exactly. So because I gave up writing as a dream for a long, long time, I spent 15 years working in education as a curriculum developer. I taught teachers how to teach reading. You know, I have a breadth of experience all in the language area, but all of the research I did, all of the public speaking I did, and all of the coaching of teachers that I did really lined me up nicely for ghostwriting, because if you give me a difficult concept and you're talking to me about it for 15 minutes, I can break it down into pieces that we can teach. And that's what writing nonfiction books is.
It's interesting. I'm an IT technician for a school district here in Kansas City, so I'm in that environment. I totally understand the world that you come from and that you're in. So I understand how all of those can kind of hop on. My wife was a fifth grade teacher for 20 plus years. She's high school English now, so I'm immersed in that world all the time. So I totally get it.
Yes, you are.
you know, and so I'm curious, when the thing about ghostwriting is it's something that people don't probably consider or think about a lot, but is it more prevalent than we think?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm part of a network of ghostwriters at this point, right? I have a mastermind group that I'm part of, and we're all ghostwriters. And one of the things, well, there's a couple of different pieces. Number one is all of the folks that I've connected with who are ghostwriters are more collaborative than competitive, right? Because we all have our niche. We all have a certain type of book that we specialize in writing. And we refer people all the time, all over the place. And there's plenty of work for all of us. You know, I have people ask me all the time, with AI becoming so popular, am I worried about my job? No, is the answer. And there's a lot of nuance to the answer, but the final answer is no. But yes, it's much more prevalent than we think. You know, there's a lot of big names that use ghostwriters, and there's a lot of ghostwriters who also work as developmental editors and book coaches, which I do as well. So even if we haven't written the whole manuscript, there's a lot of books that have a ghostwriter's flavor in there somewhere.
I totally get it. So let me ask you this. what were the seeds early in your life as a child that were planted into you that gave you this combination of writing, entrepreneurship, teaching? I mean, there's a lot of things that you're doing that really teeter on this hemisphere of right and left brain. How did all that happen?
Oh, that's an interesting question. My writing was always encouraged. So, when I got into college and people started saying, oh, you can't make a living as a writer, one of the things I heard a lot was, oh, you can't possibly be, I was a journalism major, you can't possibly be a journalist and have kids because, you'll just be too busy, which is hilarious to me at this point.
Yeah.
But my parents always encouraged writing. I got a lot of positive feedback on writing in school, running the newspaper and all of that. So that certainly helped that right brain. You mentioned your sibling making fun of your art and having that sort of have you press on the brakes, right? And there's a lot of neuroscience that says when it comes to creative tasks, if we introduce criticism too early, it just shuts down creativity altogether. Because then we introduce anxiety, and anxiety kills creativity. So that piece of it, the creativity piece, was always encouraged. The left brain, the entrepreneurial, analytical piece, I promised myself I would never be financially dependent on another person. And, there's a lot of family history that goes into that decision. So I had someone say to me the other day that they think I'm more than a ghostwriter, more than a nonprofit founder. They think I'm a professional problem solver. And I think there's some truth to that. I developed some really good analytical problem-solving skills, probably due to the teachers I had. I'm from a family that has a strong science background. My father and two of my brothers have PhDs in molecular biology and chemistry and all of that stuff that I'm not touching. But it was definitely part of the dynamic I grew up with.
So talk to me a little bit about heroes. Just in the brief time that we've talked, you've gone through so many incarnations career-wise, and with being paralyzed and the health issues that you've had. Who has been that inspirational bedrock or that hero for you that's allowed you to evolve into who you are today?
Oh, I thought of there was a thank you speech that Snoop Dogg gave once. It's like, first of all, I'd like to thank myself.
Yeah,
that popped into my head just now. No, but in all seriousness, there was a day, and I'm not paralyzed any longer. I was a competitive weightlifter before I got sick. I'm back in the gym. I can't run anymore, but most things I can do. I'm back to skiing and all kinds of stuff. So very grateful for that. But one of the things that made that and all the entrepreneurial stuff possible is my husband. There was a day, it was the day I got the medical retirement paperwork from the Teachers Retirement Board here in Connecticut. And I was sitting on the couch. I had the walker that I was using at the time was sitting in front of me. And I remember getting the letter, opening it, and, I'm sitting there, and I have tears streaming down my face, and my husband's like, it's going to be okay. You're going to figure it out. And I remember I kicked the walker over like a toddler having a tantrum, and I was like, I'm not good at anything else. And my husband said to me, and he continues to say to me all the time, he's like, I bet on you when we got married because I think you're a good bet, and I'm going to keep betting on you because you're a good bet, and you're going to figure this out.
Wow.
And so him saying that on repeat, right? Because we can't just hear it once. He has to say it enough so that it shuts up the voice in my head telling me I'm not good at anything else, right? So I needed that, and then, quite frankly, having another person in my life who could take care of medical benefits and such so that I could build a business instead of trying to find a job that didn't fit my medical needs made a huge difference. And that's actually the reason I started the nonprofit that we just launched, because, you know, I recognize that not everybody has that support system.
So let me ask you this. What consistently has been that motivator for you to get up and to do this work, to evolve as a human being yourself, to do things professionally to the best of your ability? What has been that juggling act that has fueled and been the energy behind it?
I have 5 kids, and, you know, when I got sick, my youngest was just about to turn 3. And we're a yours, mine, and ours family, so our oldest right now is 27, our youngest is 8. And, like, there was no way I was letting my kids see their mom give up.
Yeah.
On life, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't an option. And then, you know, when I started to see the way my kids responded to the way I was living, you know, my son would say, "Oh, my mom is sick, but she's like healthy sick because she takes really good care of herself, but she just has, you know, a problem with her muscles not working sometimes." You know, and then that fueled a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
And now at this point, my 8-year-old daughter right now is working on writing and illustrating a book that she wants to publish on Kindle Direct.
Cool.
At 8 years old, she sees that as something she can do. My 22-year-old is in college, and she changed her major to graphic design with a focus in marketing because she says, well, I want to do art. She's a visual artist. She's fantastic. She's like, well, I want to do art, but I want to do art in a way that actually makes me a living. And then my 14-year-old talks about himself in the future as an entrepreneur, not as someone who's working for someone else. And so every one of those shifts in me created a shift in my children, and then that fueled me even more.
You know, I think sometimes, you know, the job of being a parent can be a thankless world, and it's really hard to evaluate, you know, the effectiveness sometimes of what you're doing and how you're doing it. And it seems like with what you just said right there, that has to be one of the best levels of validation, recognition that you could ever imagine.
Yeah, I just, hearing my kids talk about themselves differently, you know, I mean, they like themselves, right? And that comes from having parents who like themselves and seeing that. And, you know, like, I'm traveling next week. I'm going to PodFest. I'm speaking in front of a group of a few, you know, who I don't know how many are signed up for my session, but last year it was packed. And I'm away for a week for it. And, you know, I'll miss the kids. There's a little bit of that, like, oh, I wish I could be home and there at the same time. But my kids see it and they're like, oh, that's so cool. Mom, you're going to be on stage. Show us the video. Like, it's very, yeah, it's good. There are no downsides as far as I'm concerned.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned, you know, when the kids see you, that's the best example. I remember before I had my son Miles, who's 20 now, I was a smoker, and I was like, I'm not going to do it. Because I remember when I smoked, I have a couple siblings, and all of us smoked, and I saw the pain in my dad's eye. But it's that whole thing that, you know, you do as I say, not as I do thing. And I remember thinking, no matter what you say, all kids are going to do is they're going to soak up what you do. That's just all there is to it. They're going to do what you do. So there's so many examples.
Yeah, so much of our words just fades into the background, especially once they get a little older, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, in all of these incarnations, your professional life and being a parent and a spouse and all of those things, if you were to have a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, the wisdom you've accumulated over time, what advice would you give your younger self?
Be willing to pivot.
Yeah.
Like, make a plan and chase that, whatever that plan is, chase it, go in that direction 100%.
Yeah.
and be willing to pivot.
So let me ask you this. Of everything that you've accomplished and become and evolved into at this point, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
So in December, we were awarded a $150,000 grant to launch a nonprofit called Journey to Success, and we are helping people who are disabled mid-career start businesses that they can do from home that don't tax their physical needs. And I am incredibly proud of the fact that I was able to use just my words to convince someone to give me that amount of money to help people. And I'm thrilled that I have built a network of incredible business owners and coaches and service providers who can help these folks start businesses. I have a marketing genius that I've worked with as a coach, and she's working with one of the women we're helping through the nonprofit right now. She reduced her coaching fee for us by a significant margin, just because she believes in the work we're doing. And I love that system I'm building to help other disabled folks find a way to continue working and contributing in meaningful ways.
That is wonderful. So at the end of the day, everyone out there has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone around you. But you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I am an entrepreneur who is focused on connection above anything else.
So if anyone out there wants to reach out, learn more, hire you, any of the good business, where can they go? Where's the best place?
Yeah, the nonprofit website is in the works, but we will be on social media shortly. So that's Journey to Success Incorporated, based out of Connecticut. My ghostwriting agency is Connected Ghostwriting LLC, and we specialize in working with mental health and social justice professionals. And so you can find us connectedghostwriting.com, Connected Ghostwriting LLC on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and then my name all over the place too, Maria Chapman, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I've got a bunch of stuff published on Medium as well.
Excellent. Maria, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. What a gritty, courageous story. Thank you for taking a minute out today, and continued success. Have a wonderful 2025.
Thanks. You too. It was a good conversation. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.